And you can't bring back a life that after I have asked for help repeatedly.
Tonight, the mother of a girl who died of a drug overdose while in government care wants changes to the child welfare system. Also, Saskatchewan has announced funding to ensure Ukrainian students who fled war will not have to pay the much higher international fees at universities. Plus,
It tasted like dirt for some reason, and I was like, oh, a little off. And I went to go brush my teeth, and it smelled off, and I was like, okay, so maybe something's wrong with the water.
tap water in Regina and Moose Jaw doesn't smell pretty right now. We'll find out what's to blame.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, May 11th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. The mother of a teen girl who died of a drug overdose while in government care wants to see changes. As CBC News first reported, a caseworker waited a month to look for the girl after she fell in with drug dealers. The mother joined the NDP at the legislature today to lobby for a watchdog committee. Adam Hunter has the story.
And you can't bring back a life that after I have asked for help repeatedly.
Angela Severite says the Ministry of Social Services failed her and her daughter Stelena. In February 2021, Angela signed over the care of her daughter to the ministry. A year and a half later, the 14-year-old girl was dead.
To have to give my daughter up to get the help that I thought was going to save her, in the end, it destroyed me, it destroyed my daughter.
Bonnie Ford, a youth worker from a nonprofit group, went looking for Stelena. Ford knew the teen was addicted to drugs and living a dangerous life. In late April 2022, Ford found her in bad shape inside a drug dealer's trap house. When Stelena would not leave, Ford contacted social services. 29 days later, a caseworker went to the house but said they could not gain access. A couple days later, Stelena was dead.
I think the department needs changes. The Children's Advocacy could make recommendations, but that doesn't necessarily mean the department has to follow them.
The opposition is calling on the government to create a child death review committee to investigate the cases of children who die in ministry care. It wants more transparency about what went wrong in cases like Stelena's, so mistakes are not repeated.
It's been taking a long time, and the stakes are high. In the meantime, we've seen child deaths and injuries in care go up. And so I'd like to see this government move with much more urgency.
I have no daughter, and I wasn't going to go through with any of this because I thought, well, she's not here now. I don't need to take this on. I don't need to keep this going, but I have to because I don't want her to die in vain.
Anytime there's somebody passes too soon, it's certainly a tragedy.
The Minister of Social Services, Jean Mikowski, says due to privacy, he cannot speak about the specifics of Stelena's case or the results of an investigation that was conducted. Angela Severite and Bonnie Ford met with Minister Mikowski in his office this afternoon. They want the details of the investigation and any recommendations made public in order to shine a light on what went wrong and to find out how the government intends to fix the system. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
Displaced Ukrainian students who couldn't afford high international student fees at Saskatchewan universities will get some relief. The government of Saskatchewan has announced funding to help Ukrainian students pay the same fees as Canadians. Ukrainians who fled the war came to Canada under a special fast-track program that didn't grant them permanent resident status. So they were going to be charged international student tuition rates, which can be $25,000 to $35,000 a year instead of about $8,000. A grade 12 student in Wawota who wants to study dentistry at the U of S was at the government announcement this morning.
It's really good news for us because we came from war, not for tourists or something like that. We are very happy to hear that, and I think everything will be fine.
Certainly want people to stay and work and live and raise a family here in Saskatchewan, and post-secondary education is a key part of that. We also want to provide opportunities, I think, for those that want to return to the Ukraine, who want to return and build their country.
Advanced Education Minister Gordon Wyatt says about 24 Ukrainian students who graduate from high school in Saskatchewan will be eligible for the support. If you live in Regina or Moose Jaw and you've noticed your tap water is a bit off these days, you're correct. The laboratory at the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Plant noticed an issue about 2 weeks ago. And as Jesse Anton reports, while the water is safe to drink, that musty smell and taste is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, it tastes like a lake water or something. Like it's a more of saltiness and little bit stinks also.
Just off, stale kind of, almost like algae.
And that's exactly what experts at this water treatment plant say it is. Algae blooming below the surface weeks ahead of schedule at Buffalo Pound Lake. This is where Regina and Moose Jaw's water comes from before it's filtered here. Lab manager Blair Kardash says he's only seen this a few times in his 30-year career.
It's just part of the natural cycle of algae in Buffalo Pound Lake. And unfortunately, it's happening right now.
It's a matter of that calm, dry, hot weather mixed with, no wind and wave action, and algae really thrive in those conditions. So it's just a matter of having the right weather conditions at the right time.
Or the wrong time. The lab manager says they expect to see algae in mid-June, and by then they have carbon filters which are activated May long weekend. But now his team is trying to kickstart the process, but they can only do so much.
And it's a process that takes anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to accumulate in a backwashing process to the top of the granular activated carbon bed, and then this stuff has to be raked, and then it has to be vacuumed off.
Alan DeLugan is in charge of the plant's $325 million renewal project. He says in 2 years, their current processes could be a thing of the past, thanks to a new ozone facility and biologically activated carbon filters. Things DeLugan says are more in tune with Mother Nature's clock.
That will take all the taste and odor, the last remnants, 100% of the year. So we're never going to have a startup shut down. Everything is going to just continuously flow.
As for right now, Kardash says his team is using powdered activated carbon to get the water back to normal, but it's not expected to fully kick in until sometime next week. And until then,
citizens of Regina and Moose Jaw can be assured that even though there's a hint of taste and odor, there is no concerns about safety of the drinking water that we produce.
So while it might not be aesthetically pleasing, the Water Security Agency confirms the drinking water does meet regulatory standards. Jesse Anton, CBC News, Regina.
Two Regina City councillors who broke the city's ethics guidelines must wait a bit longer to learn their fate. But while they may be reprimanded for filing a lawsuit, they've been cleared of any harassment. As Alexander Kwan reports, the city's manager doesn't seem to accept that.
The ongoing saga between two city councillors and the city manager continues to dominate hours of council's time.
I am seeing some conduct from council members that is not meeting that high ethical standard.
Regina's Integrity Commissioner Angela Kruk presented her report after investigating the conduct of Councillor Andrew Stevens and Dan LeBlanc. They filed a lawsuit last year against the city manager, Nikki Anderson, after she disregarded a motion from council and left funding for homelessness out of a draft budget. The Integrity Commissioner ruled the lawsuit reflected poorly on the city government, and thus the councillors violated the city's code of ethics.
The purpose is not to punish. It's not for retribution. It is to prevent the conduct from happening again in the future.
But the Integrity Commissioner says the councillors did not harass or disrespect Anderson. She has previously said she felt harassed and isn't backing down from that claim.
When I have to work in a place where my bosses are saying things that are untrue to the media, where they're skewing words, where frankly, they're creating chaos in the social media world where I would say things are being distorted. I'll let you pick what that word is.
Mayor Masters has also used the word harassment in the past, but didn't comment on the conclusion there was none.
The issue before council is, as a body of an employer, how do we go forward?
The Integrity Commissioner recommended the councillors write a written apology to Anderson and face a reprimand. Anderson says she doesn't want an apology. Instead, she said the entire event could be put to bed if the counselors offered an apology to the public. That seems unlikely, with Stevens and LeBlanc believing this is a dispute over their politics.
And if after several more meetings they do decide to tell me to write an apology, is to say, you folks write the apology to describe what you think I should feel, and then insert a line that says, we're requiring Dan to sign this. And I'll sign that document.
In the end, the mayor and council voted to discuss this in private next week.
I'm not enjoying the fact that we're kicking this down the road a little bit further.
The city manager says she still doesn't feel comfortable working with Councillor Stevens and LeBlanc. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
Alberta remains under a state of emergency from wildfires. More than 30,000 people have been forced from their homes, the smoke prompting an evacuation on our side of the border. About 200 people from Buffalo River Dene Nation in northwestern Saskatchewan have been moved to Lloydminster, where they'll remain over the weekend. The province is also supporting community-led evacuations of Dillon, Michelle Village, and St. George's Hill. There are 18 active fires in Saskatchewan, but none are threatening communities at this time. Meanwhile, in Alberta, there are 77 wildfires, 23 of which are deemed out of control. Premier Danielle Smith pointed to the magnitude of this year's unprecedented situation.
Over the past 5 years between January and May, by this time, we normally only have 546 hectares burned. But this year, that number is 410,441 hectares.
Canadian Armed Forces personnel are being sent to some hard-hit areas to assist with firefighting, airlifts, and evacuations. Fire crews from BC, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, and Yukon are also helping out. Today, the provincial and federal governments announced a donation match program through the Red Cross that would see every $1 donated become $3. The fire risk is expected to remain high in coming days. Hot and windy conditions are in the forecast for much of Alberta. A special training program for firefighters was hosted in Saskatoon over the last 4 days with the goal of preventing deaths and close calls. Firefighters from 5 of the biggest departments from across central Saskatchewan were in attendance.
Who will then be able to take these skills back to their home communities and teach their fellow firefighters how to recognize the dangers of a changing fire environment and how to respond appropriately, and also practice some of those key mayday or those how to call for help when you find yourself in distress.
They were taking the International Association of Firefighters, or IAFF, Fire Ground Survival Training Program. Taterin says it's been about 10 years since they've been able to put on a training course of this kind. Firefighters practice serious scenarios that involve getting lost, injured, trapped, or disoriented and requiring self-rescue. The program was initiated by the IAFF after research into firefighter line of duty deaths and close calls. A renewed agreement signed today means that sport, culture, and recreation groups will continue to benefit from lottery sales in our province.
To ensure that we have 6 years of committed funding to all these organizations, it's a good day.
The agreement was signed between the Government of Saskatchewan, Sask Sport, Sask Culture, and the Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association. Money from Sask Lotteries benefits about 12,000 nonprofit volunteer-led groups in the province. For the 2022-23 fiscal year, about $60 million was distributed through the Sask Lotteries Trust Fund. Lottery tickets have been a dedicated fundraiser for sport, culture, and recreation in Saskatchewan since 1974. Changes are afoot at Riversdale Pool in Saskatoon. Crews are working away installing a new water slide. Both the slide and the support structure have been replaced. According to the City of Saskatoon's website, it should open up June 6th, followed by a staggered opening of the city's 3 other outdoor pools. This weekend's forecast might make you wish they were open sooner. Ethan will explain in his forecast after the break. Stay with us. A group of young people from 11 First Nations in Treaty 4 territory are looking for ways to preserve their traditional languages. They're spending this entire week in Fort Qu'Appelle to learn from language keepers. Yesterday, they were joined with elders and elected leaders to plant 11 trees, one for each First Nation that makes up the File Hills Qu'Appelle Tribal Council. And those 11 First Nations speak 5 different languages: Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota. The Youth Advisory Council is learning the connection between language and the land.
Kanse Natiga San Montana Black Sioux, Egwa Nia Nehio Esquil, Otsit Nia Nehio Potnak. Hello, my name is Montana Black Sioux, and I am a Cree woman from Pipot First Nation. Our language is like tied to our land, and back in the day, us as Indigenous people didn't have a problem with speaking our language, and here we are today. We're stumbling on our words, and we don't know how to pronounce things correctly, and yeah, it's sad that we can't speak our language for sure. We want that knowledge back, because that's who we are as Indigenous people, to be able to speak our language and be able to learn off the land and learn from our elders. And I hope that one day we're all cookum and mushums and we're able to do the same thing that they're doing for us today.
This week has been declared the first ever Languages in Our Lands Week by the Tribal Council. It plans to celebrate it every year.
This weather update is brought to you by Crestview Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, proud member of the Capital Automotive Group.
Our weather specialist Ethan Williams joins me now, and after all those warm days, we have some really wet ones ahead.
Yeah, we have a pretty big system moving into the province, Sam. In fact, rainfall warnings now out for portions of southeastern Saskatchewan, including Carlisle, Oxbow, as well as the Weyburn-Estevan area and Assiniboia, Gravelbourg too. And I should also note that the National Weather Service in the United States has issued a flood watch for portions of northeastern Montana. These are 2 counties, Daniels and Sheridan County, that border southern Saskatchewan. So even though Environment Canada can't issue flood watches, it doesn't have the watch available for that. Just gives you a sense of how extensive the flooding could be in portions of the province. The Water Security Agency, though, has issued its own flood advisory, and this extends, I'll step out of the way here and you can get a better look at it, northward to around the Trans-Canada Highway, as far east as the Manitoba border, right along the U.S. border and over to Assiniboia. And they are saying that on top of flooding, overland flooding, there's still lots of moisture on the ground here, so there could be some flooding at times in fields. The Souris River and Long Creek basins are the 2 in particular that we're keeping our eye on. And now, the reservoirs in the area are pretty full at this point, but there is still some additional storage in the Boundary, Rafferty, and Divine dams in southeastern Saskatchewan, and they are going to be using the channel to get that water out of there. And even just looking at the radar earlier this afternoon, we've been seeing that rain starting to move into southern Saskatchewan, into Regina and Moose Jaw, Assiniboia, Gravelbourg, and some thunderstorms in behind that in portions of the U.S. Now, there's kind of 2 systems at play here. This is the Colorado low that's bringing all the moisture. You can see it stretching up the plain states of the U.S. Pretty significant severe weather outbreak happening on the other side of it. But we have this area of high pressure here, and that's going to be interacting with the system, and it could potentially break down the rain in portions of southern Saskatchewan. But I still think we're going to get a good soaking even through tomorrow morning. Portions of really that extreme southeastern area going to be seeing the heaviest amounts, and even into tomorrow afternoon and into early Saturday morning. This system is pretty stagnant. It's not moving all that much, and there could be some very heavy pockets in there, even still some showers on Saturday. So in terms of rain, even just by midnight tonight, we could be getting close to 20 millimeters in the Estevan area, and by tomorrow morning, we could be as high as 40 to 50 in southeastern Saskatchewan, close to 25 in Weyburn. Regina, Moose Jaw, I think by the end, maybe 10 to 20. These amounts may be undershot a little bit, but some local amounts could be as high as 80 millimeters in southeastern Saskatchewan. The good news is that the pressure on this low pressure system is not very deep, and the center of the low is quite far to our south. So we're not seeing wind gusts pick up all that much over these next 24 to 48 hours. Nonetheless, will still be a good idea to have your emergency kit ready to go in case flooding takes out power lines or causes other infrastructure damage. Regina, we will see temperatures cool down with the rain tomorrow, and that'll be the same for southern Saskatchewan, but then things quickly picking back up, temperatures getting very warm warm very quickly. Saskatoon, Swift Current, Yorkton, all those areas kind of north and west of the system, I don't think you're going to be seeing really much rainfall, between 0 and 5 millimeters. But then hot, hot, hot afterwards, Sam. Rain today, gone tomorrow.
No kidding. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Six fluffy little lion cubs have become the star attraction at a zoo in Lahore, Pakistan. The babies were born to two separate lionesses and are about 2 to 3 months old. The cubs are very popular with visitors. Once they're older, they'll be allowed to roam freely in an enclosure on 30 acres of land set aside for the lions. We'll be back after the break. An Ontario provincial police officer has been killed and 2 others were injured in a shooting overnight in Bourget, about 50 kilometers east of Ottawa.
Our officers responded to a sound of gunshots that was reported by a citizen. They arrived at a residence on Laval Street in Bourget, and upon arrival, 3 of our officers were ambushed and shot.
The 3 officers were rushed to hospital where 42-year-old Sergeant Eric Mueller died of his injuries. 2 other OPP officers are wounded and 1 remains in hospital in serious but stable condition. A 39-year-old male has been taken into custody. Police say there is no threat to the public. The shooting is under investigation. And Ethan's back with one last look at your weather.
And for Regina, I think that rain going to beginning overnight, and we're going to be seeing it through the morning tomorrow. Again, probably 10 to 20 millimeters in the Regina area through the night tonight and through the day tomorrow. Again, still raining at the noon hour. Gusts going to pick up a little bit out of the northeast around 40. Again, Saskatoon, Swift Current, even eastward to around Yorkton. I don't think, probably 0 to 5 millimeters, and that is going to be the case definitely in Saskatoon tomorrow. Not much rain expected. Maybe a chance of it before the noon hour tomorrow, but after that, the chance drops off and we're just left with cloudy skies. Temperatures not too bad. Not too bad at all to get a little fruit going, just like this squirrel enjoying a nice orange. I think you need to peel that first in order to be able to eat it well, Sam. Special thanks to Kelly for sending that in north of Saskatoon.
Well, that's adorable. Thanks, Ethan. And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/sask or /Saskatoon or subscribe to CBC Saskatchewan's YouTube channel. We will be back with more local news tonight at 11. And tomorrow, you can find us online as we're preempted on the network because of NHL playoff hockey. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.